Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to UPSC Prelims Phoenix batch. Now you know the schedule for Phoenix batch, okay? We are covering the entire syllabus for prelims examination. Both static plus current affairs. Everything would be covered, everything would be revised. We would provide you with the notes, everything would be there, plus we would practice more than 7,000 MCQs. Now as per the schedule, today is day 2 for economics current affairs, okay? Now in yesterday's class, we covered economic growth and development related current affairs. Today, we will focus on current affairs related to money and monetary policy and inflation. Plus, we are going to discuss chapter number 3 and chapter number 5 from economic survey. So today's MCQs would cover these particular current affairs, which includes economic survey as well. All right. So you're already aware of the schedule. You're already aware of the notes. The notes were shared with you in advance. I am hoping, this is my assumption, that before watching this lecture, you have already gone through the notes. Please do not watch this lecture before going through the notes. Otherwise, your value addition would be only partial. Okay, these MCQs would totally help you if you follow the proper schedule. All right. Okay, then let's straight away dive into today's lecture. Okay, without further ado, let's begin. So current affairs, day 2, and today's topics are monetary policy and inflation. Okay, so current affairs related to these topics. Plus, one more thing, we are going to cover chapter number 3 and 5 from economic survey. So the first 10 questions would be related to these two topics, current affairs, and then next 10 questions would be related to this. Okay, so everything would be covered. So let's begin with first section of this particular lecture. Let's begin with question number 1. Okay. So with reference to RBI surplus transfer to central government, consider the following statements. The transfer is governed by section 47 of the RBI Act, which classifies the payment as dividend. The RBI is exempted from paying income tax or super tax on its profits under section 48 of the RBI Act. Economic capital framework based on Bimal-Jalan committee requires the RBI to maintain a contingent risk buffer of exactly 7.5% of its balance sheet. Now listen to me very carefully. You see, RBI does performs a pivotal role in India's economy. It handles India's credit policy. It handles India's monetary policy, right? This is very important role. This is a very important role that RBI performs. But RBI also earns money. Okay, it earns profits. Now, since RBI is a government entity, the surplus profits earned by RBI would be shared with central government of India. Okay, so what happens is that RBI earns some profit. Some of those profits are kept with RBI for emergencies, and the surplus is transferred to government of India. This is the case. Okay, so, and this surplus transfer, the technical term for this is surplus transfer, is governed by section 47 of the RBI Act, but it is called surplus only. It is not called dividend. Why? The term dividend is used for commercial companies established under Companies Act. RBI is not a commercial entity. RBI is a statutory body established under RBI Act 1934. That is why the term dividend is not used, surplus is only used. Okay, so first statement is false. Remember this. Now, yes, RBI earns profits and it is exempt from paying income tax on those profits. Naturally so, because RBI is there to perform a role for India's economy. You can't tax it. It is not a for-profit body. Okay, so this part is correct. Now, the thing is, whatever profits are earned by RBI, remember, whatever profits are earned by RBI, and in the next MCQ, I'll explain how RBI earns profits. Whatever profits are earned by RBI, well, some of it is kept by RBI for emergencies, or let's call them contingencies. Okay, for emergencies. And some of that is surplus, which is transferred to the government. Now, how much of the profit should be kept in contingency? How much of the profit should be kept as surplus so as to transfer to the government? There should be a framework for that. For that reason, well, government established a committee called Bimal-Jalan Committee. And Bimal-Jalan Committee basically gave a framework for this, which is called Economic Capital Framework. And based on this framework, today, RBI keeps some money for contingencies in the Contingent Risk Buffer Fund, and the rest of it is transferred as surplus to the government. Now, as per Bimal Jalan Committee recommendations, remember this, money to be kept in contingent risk buffer should be 4.5 to 7.5% of RBI's profits. Okay, not exact 7.5% of its balance sheet, 4.5 to 7.5%. So there is a range. Bimal Jalan Committee was not rigid, they gave a range. Hence, this statement is also false. The answer would come out to be B. Alright? Okay. Now, through the next MCQ, you will understand how RBI earns money. Okay? Alright. Now, the reason why this was in current affairs, this surplus transfer by RBI was in current affairs was because RBI transferred record amount of surplus to the government this year, last year basically. So that is why it was in the news. So which of the following factors contributed to record surplus transfer of 2.69 lakh crore by RBI in last financial year or this financial year? So how could RBI transfer so much surplus? Okay, that means RBI earned a lot of money. How? Higher yields on foreign sovereign bonds like US treasuries, realized exchange gains from selling US dollars to stabilize rupee, increased interest income from repo operations due to domestic liquidity deficit, sharp appreciation in the price of gold reserves. Okay, so how does RBI earn money? So first, let's start with topic number 4. So RBI has a lot of gold. Okay, now RBI purchased this gold way back in past. Let's suppose RBI purchased this gold at 100 rupees per ounce. Let's suppose today gold is 500 rupees per ounce. Yes. And today, to boost liquidity or to absorb liquidity, RBI had to sell this gold. So RBI purchased this gold at 100 and now will be selling it at 500. So RBI is earning 400 per ounce of gold it has sold. Yes. So this is the way it does that. Same, RBI also has dollars. It purchases dollars at 80 rupees and then sold it at 90 rupees. So RBI is gaining money. So realize exchange gains from selling US dollars. Yes. Plus, you all know about repo and reverse repo. Yes, repo operations, reverse repo operations. Yes, you all know about it. What is repo? The interest rate at which RBI loans money to banks. Now, banks pay back this money at some interest rate. Okay, so that interest is RBI's income. So there were too many repo operations because of which RBI earned money. Plus the surplus money with RBI in the form of dollars. Sometimes RBI invests it in US government bonds. And those US government bonds also provide yield. That is also RBI's income. So all 4 factors led to increase in RBI's surplus. Okay. There was a lot of gold sold. There were a lot of dollars that were sold, too many repo operations and good yield on US treasuries. So all these factors contributed to RBI earning a lot of profit and hence they transferred a lot of it to the government. So the answer would come out to be D. Make sense? Okay, remember this. An MCQ can be asked from RBI surplus transfer. So pay close attention to this. Okay. Next question. In the context of liquidity adjustment facility corridor, as of early 2026, consider the following pairs. The liquidity adjustment facility instrument and the role it performs in the corridor, policy corridor. So marginal standing facility, ceiling. Standing deposit facility, floor. Repo rate, policy rate, center of the corridor. Okay. So look, earlier there used to be reverse repo rate. But reverse repo rate was replaced by standing deposit facility. We'll talk about it. Okay. Let's suppose this is 6%. Repo rate is 7%. And marginal standing facility rate is 8%. Okay. Now this corridor 6 to 8% is known as LAF corridor or policy corridor. Okay. Earlier, the floor of this corridor, the lower limit of this corridor was reverse repo, but this was replaced with standing deposit facility rate. So today the floor is SDF. Okay. MSF is the ceiling, the upper limit, and repo rate lies somewhere in the middle. Okay, this is the LAF corridor which you should remember. So always remember from SDF to MSF with repo rate somewhere in between. So all are correct. All are correctly matched. Okay, all right, next. Now let's talk about standing deposit facility. So standing deposit facility replaced the fixed rate reverse repo as the floor of LAF corridor primarily because Now listen to me very carefully. Okay, you need to be aware of repo and reverse repo. Then only you will understand the role performed by standing deposit facility. Okay, now whenever banks are short of money, they can take a loan from RBI. Okay, at repo rate. Let's suppose the repo rate is 7%. They can take a loan from RBI at 7%. But you are familiar with this term called collateral? Yes, what is collateral? Whenever you borrow money from a bank, you put some one or two of your assets as collateral. Okay, so that tomorrow if you fail to pay back that loan, banks would take your asset. Yes, that is kept as collateral. You all are familiar with collateral. In this case, banks keep government securities as collateral. Now, sometimes banks have surplus money and they don't know where they can lend that surplus money to. They have too much money and they can't find borrowers. So RBI says, give this money to me at some interest rate. So banks lend this money to RBI at 6%. So RBI is paying 6% to banks. This is reverse repo. But in this case also there is collateral. And because this time around RBI is borrowing that money, so RBI is keeping government securities as collateral. Yes. But now what happened was that at one point of time, there was so much surplus liquidity that all banks were at the doors of RBI to loan it money at reverse repo rate, to lend RBI that money at reverse repo rate. Now, RBI needs to have adequate government securities as collateral to absorb this money from banks. But RBI was also short of government securities. Therefore, RBI came out with a new methodology. RBI says that instead of reverse repo, you can also use this facility called SDF. Okay. In this, banks would give money to RBI at this rate only, but there would be no requirement for RBI to provide collateral. So in a sense, banks are depositing this money with RBI at this interest rate. This is known as standing deposit facility. And this replaced the reverse repo rate as the floor, new floor of LAF corridor. Okay. Now let's take a look at this question. Why SDF replaced reverse repo? It allows the RBI to absorb unlimited liquidity without being constrained by shortage of government securities. This is the most appropriate answer. You understand now? All right. Next. With reference to integrated ombudsman scheme, which of the following statements is incorrect? Now, to answer this question, first of all, you need to be aware of this term called ombudsman. Okay. Now, there are banks and you are customers. Okay. You have transactions with banks, but sometimes you're not happy with the service delivery of the banks or you have some complaints. Now, you can file those complaints with banks itself, but banks would generally take a decision in their favor only. There is a conflict of interest, right? So there should be a third party where you can file complaints against banks. And that third party should be fair in their decisions. That third party for banking system is known as banking ombudsman. Okay. Now, there are too many banking ombudsmen in India, okay, which cater to different sets of banks. Now, this creates confusion. That is why government came out with a scheme, RBI came out with a scheme that for all the banks in India, there should be one ombudsman. So every customer can go to that one place only. There shouldn't be any confusion. So we integrated all the ombudsmen into one body, and that was integrated ombudsman scheme. Okay. So which of the following statements is incorrect in this case? It adopts one nation, one ombudsman approach where a customer can file a complaint at a single point of reference. Yes, that was the entire purpose of this. The scheme now includes credit information companies to address credit score grievances. So, for example, your credit score is 200. And that is why no bank is ready to loan money to you. But in your entire life, you have never defaulted on any loan. So, your complaint is that why is my credit score so low? This is unfair. So you can file these complaints with ombudsman as well. Okay. Under 2026 norms, a customer must file a complaint within 1 year of regulated entity. Regulated entity in this case is bank. Bank's response. What the statement means is that you filed a complaint with bank. Bank gave a response with which you were not satisfied. Now you will file a complaint with Ombudsman within 1 year. Okay, you have to file it within 1 year. If you are, well, basically, if you delay it further, then you can't file a complaint. Now that time has been reduced from 1 year to 3 months. It is no longer 1 year anymore. It is 90 days now. Okay, you can't delay it indefinitely. So this statement is false because of that. Ombudsman cannot hear matters involving commercial judgment. Yes, if a bank refused you a loan based on your poor credit score, you can't file a complaint with Ombudsman. So this part is also correct. The incorrect statement is C. The answer is C. All right. Okay, next. Consider the